I'm gonna be honest. I've talked about this in the last two videos I did, and as much as I am still doing, it's like as much as I am still recording, editing, and posting these videos, the fear and the anxiety that comes up within me doesn't usually dampen or lessen. But I guess that goes to show things don't get better. You just get better at handling them. Also, as I am filming this video, I am currently doing I think it was called the Chinese box? I don't know. I'm playing with GIMP again. One of the things that I wanted to do when I was younger and didn't do until like I was almost 18. And now that I have the ability to do it, I'm in a crafts mode, but also this helps with handling the anxiety as well as my lack of focus half the time. So this is what we're handling with. Also, I'm doing a sit down video again because I could not be bothered to set up for standing up. So for this video, at the very least, we're back to the sit down and we're back sitting down on my bed. Hi, I am your local internet friend, aka Toki, and the video that I wanted to do after my official introduction to Luna's illusion, or Luna's vision. As I said, there's like 3 different names that I use for the project. One of the things that I felt like I needed to talk about is very specifically what is going on between me and my older sister. One, because it has essentially been like over a year since we have actually been friendly towards each other. And I definitely wanted to go ahead and talk about that specifically and how we got to that point. The first thing that I want to talk about is the idea of the phrase blood is thicker than water. I've already talked about this in a live stream turned video that I did when I couldn't edit, so I decided to do live streams instead. But I will explain at least 2 things. One, the phrase blood is thicker than water is not the full phrase. The full phrase is the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. And its generalized idea is you can choose when it comes to relationships outside of your family, but you can't choose the people that you are blood related to. And the people that you specifically choose, those relationships are often stronger than the relationship that you have with your family. Again, because you are the ones that you get to choose them. And this itself is possibly the best personal example from experience of me learning this lesson. When we were young, my sister and I seemed to have had a close-knit bond. Essentially, we were always together, and it definitely seemed like it was us against the world. I hate the fact that I ended up saying that, especially with the documentary that I ended up watching about someone that ended up saying the same thing about a romantic relationship that they had and how all of that went. I'm not going to speak any further on that because no thank you. A few things that I want to go ahead and point out with this is back then my priority was essentially family. Because my mom kept saying at the end of the day, you only have your family. And I took that to heart. More than I do right now, to be fair. My sister and I came from the same mom and the same dad, and essentially the same family trauma, mostly. Now, to me, something always felt off, but one, that's kind of the way that I felt about most, if not all, of my family members, or just people in general. So back then, I thought it was just me, but it wasn't until uh, we stopped going to the same school that I started recognizing the fact that either I haven't been as honest as I probably should have been with her, or that she hasn't really been treating me the way that I had been treating her. And then we get into all of the things that I had thought about back then, and all of the things that I had to think about again as of about 2 years ago. Depending on who was around or if anyone was around, she would treat me differently. The best example I would be able to give is whenever we're with family or with her friends, she would always paint me as the person that was just emotionally distant toward her. Like I hated her for some reason. And continued to do that through a lot of the stories that she would tell, mainly about when I would be sleeping and she would go ahead and essentially try to interact with me or mess with me. And essentially, it seemed like she was trying to paint me as someone that was trying to. Someone that just didn't like her, but didn't say anything about it. Again, with the multitude of stories of me attacking her with whatever I had near me when I was asleep. When, of course, one, I wouldn't have known about it because I was asleep. And two, to be fair, that itself is a bit suspicious. Always constantly telling stories that I wouldn't be able to go against because I was asleep in those stories. That somehow paints you as the victim in the relationship. And to some extent, at some point, it felt like she took on the role of being a helicopter parent. After we were basically forced to go to different schools because she was 2 years older than I was, it somehow got to the point where if I made a friend, she had to go ahead and meet said friend. If I was doing something, then she would be doing the same thing. And she always wanted to be around me and wanted to know basically everything about my life. But even with that, there are certain things that I wasn't, either she just decided not to tell me, or if I asked about it, she would go ahead and act as if me asking about it was disrespectful. So basically, while she was able to essentially use her big sister card to be like, well, I have to make sure that you're okay. I have to make sure that no one's treating you badly. I wasn't allowed to go ahead and ask questions about her stuff because it's just like, oh, you don't trust that I have the ability. Like, you don't trust that I can take care of myself? Is that what you're saying? I'm incapable of taking care of myself? Your track record says enough, to be fair. That's not what this video is supposed to be about. At some point, I recognized the fact that, at the very least, she didn't see us as equals. Or the things that she was able to do, she was just able to do. But the moment I start doing it, it's a problem. And then the essential second split between us, which was basically I went to go move with my mom, she stayed with our grandmother. With that time away, it gave me time to reflect on, that's not the right color, hold on. It gave me time to reflect on everything that happened up to that point, process through enough that I started seeing the behavioral patterns. And the first and or second time that she had basically decided randomly to ignore me for days until I essentially tried to see what was going on. Because through that, in those moments, she would basically be talking to everyone else except for me, unless I said something and we were in front of other people. After that, and after her having to go ahead and deal with her own stuff, she essentially ended up moving in with us. And I had started basically making sure that I had created personal boundaries because I was burnt out at that point and I just did not feel like actually having to deal with anything. So it's like, hey, just so you know, I am not handling this, like this specific thing that you used to do. I will no longer be handling that. And for the most part, it definitely seemed like she didn't like that. Like, she didn't like the idea of, hey, I can't just walk all over you and use you to my benefit. And it got worse when she started judging me for things that I couldn't control. Very specifically, the main thing that got me was her being angry that I didn't have friends. Angry is such a strong word. I don't think it was anger. I think it's more like irritation. And while I could see exactly why she would end up being irritated, because a lot of the social interaction I ended up getting was mainly out of her, mainly from her. But it's just like, she also complained about how we hadn't really been hanging out as much. So it's just like, I am essentially trying to like hang out like we used to, but it seems like you don't really care for it. And anytime I had been like open, honest, or authentically me, from her specifically, I had only been met with judgment or rejection. Basically, her trying to invalidate me and my experience. Going back to the example of I didn't really have friends, um, she would she would blame that on the fact that I didn't really talk to people. And that itself had me thinking, how did I make friends in school? Because I also didn't really talk to people until they started talking to me. Which were the same friends that she wanted to go ahead and check to see if they were actually good friends. Which, now that I'm thinking about it, that actually just sounds like seed planting seeds of doubt. At the very least, trying to plant seeds of doubt, like, oh, you don't know how to pick friends because you usually don't talk to people. Let me go ahead and check to see if your friends are actually friends. I don't think I've had an explosive end to any of the friendships that I have made, which in and of itself sounds like a personal attack on her, and it might just be. But like, the realization had made me angry. So then we get into the cycle of her going back to ignoring me until she's ready to talk to me. And it's usually not us talking about the reason as to why she decided to personally ignore me. It's usually going back to the way that things had been before she decided to ignore me. And that happened at least like 2 to 3 times before I just decided to stop trying to ask her what's wrong and just decided not to talk to her until, just decided not to interact with her myself until either A, she decided to interact with me again, or B, unless it was something that I had to interact with her, and then just short interactions after that. The last time, which was around 2020, which was during 2022, I had had enough of her doing that, and I decided, okay, it definitely seems like we weren't friends to begin with, but I don't even think you see me as your younger sibling anymore. I don't like the fact that I'm essentially being disrespected constantly, invalidated constantly, and essentially ignored, put to the side, or not prioritized. Even though I had been like doing my best to be respectful, even as I was setting boundaries, trying to meet you where you were in general, and trying to, like, I don't know, fix what was a broken relationship. And again, treated it, prioritized you because you were family. That one's completely off script. Hold on. Now, the reason as to why it took me so long to get to that point, outside of the fact that I also had my own personal trauma to sift through and fully process, I also did not really have much of a sense of self because of my upbringing. So I had to go ahead and work on that as well, which I will have to thank BTS for. But it's mainly because I kept asking myself the question, if people that didn't even know that I personally exist tend to treat me better and tend to prioritize me as a viewer or as a fan better than the people that live with me and know me personally, at the end, there's definitely a problem. So after having, again, time alone to process everything that happened, to organize mentally the patterns, the cycles, the poor treatment, the hypocrisy, I'd finally came to the conclusion to just not engage with her unless I had to. And when I would have to, do my best to be respectful towards her. Because again, even if I absolutely despise the person, I will always try my best to be as respectful as possible. Just not silent though. Now that I've gotten all of that out of the way, how do I end this video? Please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, hit the notification to be notified of whenever I post. And put in the comments section down below any comments, questions, concerns, ideas for future videos, or how your relationship with your siblings, if you have any, is going. Because while my relationship with my older sibling is practically non-existent. My relationship with my younger sibling is actually going pretty well, if to say the least. He's annoying, but it's kind of like endearing that he's annoying. And I will hopefully see you in the next video. Now that I've basically said all of that, I've been your local internet friend, aka Toki, and this is Toki saying Toki out.